Hello and welcome to Big Picture. I am Vishal Dahiya, and today we're going to talk about the need for regulating digital media or web-based media platforms. Now, in a counter affidavit filed by the central government in an ongoing case in the Supreme Court, the government has said that there is an urgent need to put in place a regulatory mechanism for the web-based media platforms. We'll try and understand as to why it is so urgent to put in place this mechanism and what exactly is happening as far as digital media space is concerned. And for more on this, we're joined by a distinguished panel of guests. Let me first introduce them to you, beginning with Mr. Abhishek Singh. He is the CEO of MyGov platform. We also have with us Mr. Sanjay Singh, a senior journalist with a distinguished career in all three forms of journalism, that is print, electronic and the web-based digital journalism as well. And we also have with us senior advocate Ms. Karnika, Seth, and cyber law expert as well. Thank you for joining us on Rajya Sabha TV. Let me begin with you, Mr. Sanjay Singh, since you've been part of all three forms of disseminating information, that is print, electronic and digital platform as well. If you could, give us your viewpoint on what exactly is the difference here when we are looking at these three different forms of platforms, as well as what the central government is saying, that there is an urgent need for a regulatory mechanism.
I think Vishal, central government is right in its opinion, and the affidavit it has filed that there is need to regulate digital media first. Now, what is important is the word digital media first, regulate digital media first, because the issue came in Supreme Court for Sudarshan TV's Vindas Bowl program, and that program, of course, it went on air a few episodes, and thereafter it was stopped. The broadcast media, that is television, has a self-regulatory body called NPA. The print has Press Council of India and so on and so forth. Digital media does not have that kind of a regulatory body, either their own or of government constituted regulatory body. The fact remains that digital media is new in this sense. In a way, you can understand the difference as there is a censor board for cinemas that are produced on 70 or whatever, for television and for the cinema theaters, but not for OTT platforms. And same way, there is no regulatory body out here. In my personal experience, I've seen that we used to be far more responsible in choosing the news and commenting about it while I was working with print or with television. In digital media, the other problem is that you don't have so many reporters. Some outlets don't have any reporter. And even if those who have, the numbers is very small. So therefore, you don't have your personal access or first-hand news. You rely on other sources.
Okay.
And then there is also a tendency to sensationalize the news. And more so, there are few prominent websites, and there are a whole lot of other websites where you see every day, you see people running something, writing something, putting out a video and giving that kind of link on their YouTube, Facebook, wherever. What government has said is not about, what I understand is not about regulating Twitter, Facebook and other outlets, because that as it is regulated by something else. The government's contention is about the proliferation of websites and the kind of things that are put out there in name of journalism. So that, I think, is a very valid argument.
Okay, but what you're saying here looks like, that this is happening because of the race for, say, perhaps subscribers on a YouTube channel or likes on a particular website for a particular article or so. But Sanjay, before I go to Abhishek on this, one aspect here is that it is also being said that digital or web-based media platforms give a voice to those who perhaps can't afford to open a news channel or start a newspaper as well.
That's a good thing. In fact, social media as it is and digital platforms have given voice to the subalterns, to the less privileged, and people who otherwise did not have access. Earlier, it was one-way narrative. Now it's a two-way narrative. That is besides the point. The point is, in terms of responsible news, if your people are trying to peddle a fake news, say for instance, it is there on WhatsApp or Twitter or Facebook or wherever. But if somebody puts a link that this has been published www.this, see this, then that gathers further legitimacy. And therefore, if that legitimacy tag is put there, then it's very important that the source itself should be checked in name of fake news busters and fact checkers. We have come to understand that those particular sites themselves indulge in great deal of fake news, and in name of fact check busting, they actually indulge in the contrary.
Okay.
So therefore, there is a need. I don't know how harsh and how far, whether that would be self-regulatory or the government should constitute a body. That debate will go on. But yes, there needs to be some kind of mechanism where, like the difference between censor board and OTT platforms. Here again, you need some kind of situation, some kind of a device. You don't even need to register to RNI. For newspaper, you need to register. You have certain responsibilities, you have certain liabilities. You also are fearful of your credentials. In digital space, you are actually not.
Okay, definitely. There needs to be some accountability. That's what seems to be the focus here. In what form can that accountability be brought about? Abhishek, Mr. Singh, can we bring you in on this aspect, specifically looking at how to ensure this accountability in this vast digital space?
In fact, I fully agree with what Mr. Sanjay Singh said and the statement that you made. The actual challenge today is that most of these digital media platforms claim that they are platforms and they are not publishers. The nuance here is that they say that whether it's Google or whether it's Facebook or whether it's WhatsApp or whether it's Twitter or whether Instagram or any other digital media, the platform that we use today, they say here there is a place where they offer to people to come and post what they want to post. It's not that they are providers of the platform, but they are not providers of the content which is there. So they are not like a publisher. Whereas when you compare this to a electronic media or a print media domain, the publishers are someone who exercise editorial rights over what actually goes on an electronic media channel or a print media channel.
Okay.
So that has been their argument across the world, whether it's in India or United States, because this debate is raging world over. But then the question comes in that if you are a platform service provider, will you not be accountable for the content that is there? So practically speaking, since millions of people share stories there, to do a regular real-time editing as it is done on a print media or electronic media is technically very challenging. So what they do is that they very often deploy technology which is AI driven and all, which filters out content which is violent, content which is related to pornography or exploitation or anything which is racial. So these kind of contents, they say that they are filtering out. But then what happens is that when they are doing that, there have been allegations of bias in filtering out content. So there are some content which is filtered out, some which is not filtered out. And the question that comes in that if you are a platform and you are doing some filtering based on certain policies that you have, which might be applied uniformly, which might not be, this means that you are actually a publisher. So once you are actually doing things that other publishers do in the print media or the electronic media domain, then you should also be subject to the same regulation that applies to print media and electronic media. And this is what the Government of India's affidavit in the Supreme Court says, is that most of these platforms will do need to be regulated in order to ensure that the content that they are showing is something which is not violating any laws, which is not leading to hate speech, which is not leading to sexually promiscuous depiction of women or child pornography. So these things have to be regulated. So there is a need for doing this. The government has rightly said so, and I think very soon we should be seeing some regard based on the international best practices in this regard. So whether it will be self-regulatory or whether it will be a body like the Broadcast Federation, like the Electronic Media has a Broadcast Federation which looks into that, that will have to be debated. by looking into all the pros and cons of the various models that are available.
Now, this is one aspect of it, Mr. Abhishek Singh, as you pointed out. Platforms like Twitter or other platforms like Instagram, wherein you're pointing out the difference between being a publisher or just being, providing a platform to those who want to put their views across. But as Mr. Sanjay Singh was pointing out, what about those, websites or digital media channels, perhaps on the YouTube or on some other, larger platform like this, wherein people do push out news items or views items most of the times. And this is where the problem occurs, as Mr. Sanjay Singh is pointing out, not much of an accountability there.
That has to be regulated. See, anything that is a digital domain and which has a reach which is far beyond the print media or the electronic media today, and anything that is posted on a link or on a web news portal can be shared by multiple people over a WhatsApp group or multiple groups, and it can really spread news. So if they are indulging into any news publication, so they should be subject to, ideally they should be subject to the same guidelines that applies to the print media. If actually the damage that can be caused or the reasons for regulation which are there for the print media would apply to them much more than what it does to the print media or to the electronic media. So being digital does not give you any immunity from regulation as far as abiding to the laws and the conventions of the society is concerned.
Okay, definitely. That cannot be an explanation for causing any damage. Karnika, I'd like to bring you in here. What are the laws of the land as far as governing these digital media platforms are concerned? Because we do have some IT infrastructure related laws. Are they enough? Or what part of these operations do they cover as of now? Where are the gaps which need to be filled?
Internet is borderless and anonymity is inherent in it. And that is what the criminals online use as a haven. It's basically fake accounts, fake news or other activities perpetrate very easily and with a lot of damage, especially if it is a defamation action or if there are any kind of false news or other published material which are objectionable or illegal. That becomes a challenge, the technical challenge of tracing who the person is. Also, licensing is another issue because like newspapers, and like the press and media, the online media space doesn't have any kind of online licensing regime in place, which calls for compliance of various laws. But nevertheless, all the laws which are in the offline media, for example, defamation, I said, are applicable also to the online space, barring the licensing part. Otherwise, the effect of that, if it is causing a defamation, for example, there is an action possible, and we have suits for defamation filed in the courts. And there, the social media liability is also invoked if they have been brought to actual notice that this is a defamatory post or this is an objectionable post on your website or on your portal. Please remove that. They are supposed to do that within 36 hours. Now, with the Shreya Singh judgment, the Apex Court, the Supreme Court of India, they made a clarification, they made a basically explanation of what is their liability to say that they are liable if on a government agency's order or if a court has ordered takedown and it has not been taken down, then the social media agencies are liable because otherwise there are millions of pages which are being uploaded on their site every day. And for them to decide whether this is legal or illegal becomes difficult because it could be subjective. So from that point of view, it has been said that once this issue is brought before their knowledge, they have to respond within 36 hours. And only when they have an order from the court or a government agency will they be required to take it down.
Okay.
Now that creates problems because I feel that, it takes very long to get to that stage when the damage has already been caused. If there is a suit to be filed. And not everybody, especially a common man, can actually do that, barring a few people who are, willing to take this on in the court. They may not be justice to a common everyday man. That is another issue. So, having said that, enforcement is a challenge. We may have the law in place. Therefore, we need some sort of a due diligence guideline which needs to regulate this space in a more expedient manner. Because time is of the essence. In such cases, damage can really flow on the internet. Once a harmful page is there, it can actually play havoc. For example, mob lynching attacks. We've seen in the nation, we have had blue whale problem, in the game with children being the sufferers. So there are n number of issues which percolate in the internet space, and therefore there should be some more regulation and a better enforcement mechanism to tackle these problems, I feel. That is my view.
Okay. So, Sanjay, I'd like to bring you in here a very important point made by Karnika there in terms of the kind of laws which we have now, and the basic problem seems to be on the implementation part, as in, these particular platforms are only liable to take it down after a court order, and a court can't be expected to, jump in at every particular case. It becomes really, really difficult. So that brings to the moot question: is self-regulation or a regulatory mechanism put in place by the government there? Because the self-regulation also might be really difficult here because of the anonymity being a part. Most of the players, do remain anonymous. That is one. And two, if not, then the huge amount of players on the digital media platforms is something which might be a problematic aspect when it comes to self-regulation.
Vishal, two things are involved here. A, in terms of digital space, we are not including for this discussion the social media space. And if you go for litigation and if there is a defamatory news, of course, that position is very clear as laid down in the law. That is applicable for any form of media. That is fine. But every time, see from the government's perspective and from the popular perspective, what happens that there is no kind of licensing or registration as in case of newspaper or a television channel. For that, you have a whole lot of formalities through which you go, and thereafter you only can run the business or start that particular media outlet or platform or whatever that might be. And in this case, you start it instantly, and some come and they wind up their operations in a matter of months. Even some are not even kind of updated regularly. The problem here is there are some sites which are actually responsible. You can see the difference between some websites of mainline newspapers. They also keep on updating the news and also gathering news from their correspondents in Delhi, all across the country. That is also true with television channels. They are also in this particular business. Then you have a whole lot of news agencies through which you gather news. The problem lies with other side of web portals. The actual is, that's a practical problem. I'm just trying to tell my viewers as to understand this particular thing. The average is in newsroom, in a website, even if responsible ones, their experience age would be, say, 2 to 5 years. Somebody who is very young cannot differentiate between what is good, what is bad, or whether it has any relevance with the truth on the ground. That filtration process is very less and very limited with people, those who are handling the news. And therefore, the problem creeps in. Then you have some motivated things, as I said about fact checkers and the otherwise situations emerging. We actually need something. I'm not very keen on government stepping into everything. The first thing is that somebody should, the digital media platforms, the government does not even have the numbers. The government does not even have the numbers as to how many digital media players outlets are actually there. You just have to go to Google it, you search it, you find a domain, you pay 150 or 250 or something odd, and therefore you block that particular thing. Therefore, there is actually a need, some kind of basic regulation to begin with, and thereafter this self-regulation process can set in.
Okay. Mr. Abhishek, would you agree that first there needs to be an institutional mechanism which needs to be put in place, and then only the self-regulation part can come in? Because if we are, comparing it with electronic media or print media self-regulatory mechanism, that is a robust, mechanism and procedure which is already in place because the players are well known.
See, ultimately, first and foremost issue is that regulation has to be there. So first we have to agree that regulation has to be there. Then once we do that, then the question comes in, how do we regulate? So the idea will be that if somebody is launching a service which is like almost like a news portal or indulgence in sharing of news, till today FM radio channels, I don't think they are allowed to broadcast news. So when there are restrictions for other modes of medium for communication, then similar things should apply. And since all the websites which are registered, they follow certain protocol with domain service providers, they can be said that if you are in this business, you have to state that. You will have to apply to that, and there will be norms that can be done.
Okay.
And once everyone agrees to that there is a need for regulation, then a mechanism of creating a autonomous body or creating an independent body for self-regulation can come in, which can have representatives of everyone. Because the only challenge which people can say is that government should not, because of solving a small problem, we should not kill the whole industry. So there's a lot of value which many of these portals are also offering, but if somebody is misusing, that needs to be checked. So that element is what need to be done, and how we need to do. There are various models. The registrar general of it, the registrar of news, RNI does for newspapers. Then for the Independent Broadcasters Association is there for Broadcasters Association. So a combination of the two, or by brainstorming with all the service providers in this industry, we can come up with a framework that will help in not only self-regulation, but having a body which you can look into any complaints therein. Suppose there is a portal which is blocked because of doing something which is contrary to the norms, then they should be having a provision to appeal to a forum and get their redressal done. So that whole framework and that whole mechanism needs to be done. First and foremost, we need to agree and we need to act on it pretty fast, as the affidavit says, is that digital content, digital news content and digital medium, whatever is shared on it, cannot be a free-for-all medium. It has to be regulated in some form so that while freedom of speech is there, at the same time, basic norms are not violated, fake news are not circulated. These things have to be ensured.
Okay. Karnika, your views on that before we bring this discussion to an end in terms of, self-regulation, or first put in place a mechanism, as both, Abhishek and Sanjay are pointing out, an institutional mechanism should be put in place first, and then perhaps we can move towards the self-regulatory mechanism slowly, one by one, step by step, but regulation is needed.
Yes, I think there should be some institutional mechanism, because there is no KYC check at all. When you register a website, can the spoofed email ID or other address particulars, and it's very difficult to get to the person who is actually the basic owner of a particular domain. Also, if supposingly it is doing illegal activity and duping people, then there should be some KYC mechanism, some licensing regime. And also, even otherwise, every website is supposed to have a public grievance officer, and they are supposed to comply with some data protection or some other basic guidelines. Which now with the PDPA, I think once it's in place, there will be more clarity on that aspect. And the consumer protection law is also changed. So I think it is the right time when you bring in some sort of a regulatory mechanism to protect the interest of the internet community at large, because otherwise frauds and problems like fake news cannot be tackled, especially those which are running this as a business and running it illegally needs to be nipped in the bud. So that is important to be done right now. I think that's something that I completely agree on. We need some sort of a regulation. Either it could be I would say any body which is a self-regulated body with the internet community coming in together on a self-regulation basis, or it could be otherwise, with some government and private entity, collaboration where things like these can be tackled. But there has to be a mechanism, basically carved out for this reason.
Okay, so there has to be a mechanism to be carved out for ensuring that there is some sort of regulation for digital media platforms. Thank you so much, Karnika, Mr. Abhishek Singh and Mr. Sanjay Singh, for sharing your views and time with our viewers. This is all about the need for regulation of digital media platforms. As our panelists are pointing out, there is an urgent need. Now, whether it will have to be a self-regulation or some sort of institutional mechanism put in place by the government is for all the stakeholders to come together, put their head together and come to a final decision on this. We'll bring you all the details as and when it happens on this particular matter, and we'll come back again tomorrow with a different topic. Till then, keep watching Rajya Sabha Television.